Hello and welcome along to the Matchbook Betting Exchange Champions League podcast. I'm your host for the season, Daniel Hussey, and delighted to welcome our weekend football trio. Adrian, Clarke, Mark O'Hare and Miguel Delaney will be joining me each match day to go through some of the best bets that we'll have for the upcoming week preview action. But first of all, in the opening tweet, we do want to talk, or opening show, we do want to talk a little bit about the outright market. Miguel Delaney, I'll read out prices in a minute, but for you, looking forward to the new season of the Champions League, and then on the outrights, who are you kind of feeling will win the Champions League this year?
Well, I mean, for all we'd look to the usual names. I suppose most people go with kind of, even though they haven't won it, City or Paris Saint-Germain for their transfers. So I'd again return to something we've talked about in the Premier League show, which is that the weekend show, which is that this is going to be completely distorted by the World Cup. I think that's arguably more the case in Europe, just because it's midweek games. One thing we've seen in Champions Leagues in the past actually has that when you get into these situations, and this happened when in the first major shift to the football calendar, back when the Champions League expanded around 1999, what you had at that point was a lot of clubs who weren't in their domestic title races who were going the distance, basically because I suppose clubs were still adjusting, and it was very difficult to fight on both fronts until they started to build these super clubs. And because this season is just something we've never had before, it's why I think it could favour someone outside a title race. I think it'd be a difficult season for someone, say, to do a treble or a double. And that's with that connected to how badly they've started the Premier League, it's why I've sort of fancied Liverpool here. I think we could well be in a situation where suddenly, because obviously we know the base quality of their team, it does feel like it's already shaping up where they could have a league season where things don't go as smoothly as some of their title races in the past. And if that happens, I do wonder whether then they'll suddenly they should be relatively comfortable in top four, and suddenly Europe, like say 2005, becomes a major focus, or 2019 as well, given how that season shifted as well. And it's just why I kind of fancy Liverpool. And also the other side of that is they should have far fewer starters at the World Cup than some of the biggest Champions League clubs.
Interesting, Mark. I know you kind of hinted that you do kind of like Liverpool, but maybe want to leave that off and you're looking for a couple of value plays. But for you, is it the Premier League centered around this season's Champions League?
I think it has to be. Yeah, they've made up 6 of the last 10 finalists, and I know Real Madrid have won 5 titles in 9 years, but that's unprecedented. And the way in which they did it last year involved, whether you want to call it luck or fortune, whatever it is, they were outplayed in at least 3 of those knockout ties and still managed to burgle their way into the final. It was a real sort of a minor miracle that they managed to get that far, let alone win it. So I think obviously Man City are fair favourites, but you look at the Premier League, got the best coaches in the world, the biggest budgets, the biggest squads, the strongest squads. But right now, I just think it might pay to wait really until February, because nothing's going to be decided until next year, really. As Miguel says, there's a World Cup in the between. So much can change. Liverpool right now, you wouldn't fancy them as serious contenders, but come February, they more than likely absolutely will be. And so I think you've got to sort of respect the Premier League. I think if you look at the nationality of the Champions League winner, English clubs or the Premier League is an odds-on shop, which kind of shows the strength that the Premier League holds right now. But I just thought Tottenham, people will scoff at the mention of them, but Spurs at around 17 to 1, 18.0, more than double the price of Spurs, of Liverpool, I should say. I think they've really sort of retooled their squad brilliantly over the summer. They've got quality across midfield and forward areas. I think the defence is an improving process under Conte. Best points return of the Premier League this calendar year. A strike force that's as good as most in the competition, if not better than possibly 2 or 3. A seriously impressive coach in Conte. I know he's got a horrendous Champions League record, and that's something you need to bear in mind. But I just think you look at their most recent matches against 2 of the market leaders, Man City and Liverpool. They've more than held their own. So why can't they sort of topple 1 or 2 of those over 2 legs? You also, with a Premier League club, you get the benefit of not having to meet another English club in the last 16 if you get through. So then you're looking at potentially a 17 to 1 shot in the quarterfinals, which I think is a really big carrot to have if you're on Tottenham, really. So yeah, they're one. I got another sort of wilder shout, which is more of a back to lay proposition, but I think Napoli at 150 to 1 is writing them off far too soon. I know Italian clubs haven't sort of made great hay in recent competitions, and they have sort of lost a lot of key players, but they've really sort of recruited brilliantly over the summer, and I like what they've done so far this season in a tricky group, which is what works against them. But I think The Diego Maradona Stadium will be quite an intimidating prospect for an Ajax team that's in huge turnover. Rangers are an obvious danger, but I think they should be able to take at least 4 points off them. And then it's Liverpool, who are in no great shakes and have to go there first up. So there's a real opportunity for Napoli to pick up possibly at least 1, maybe 3 points. And yeah, if they get to the last 16, that price will probably be halved. So 150 to 1 on Napoli as a back to lay.
So Napoli, 150.0. Very quickly, for those that don't understand, Mark, on the back to lay, what would be your sort of strategy regarding that?
Yeah, just back them now and then wait till we'll see how they progress and hope that they get through to the knockout stages. If they win the group, they'll have a softer last 16 opponent, you would think. If not, we've just got to wait and see. But in theory, that price will contract, and when it does, you get an opportunity to lay the price off and effectively guarantee a payout really without having to see Napoli go the whole distance. So it's just a case of playing the prices and trading out when needs be.
Very good. And as Mark said, currently 150.0, and Tottenham are actually 19.5. So some couple of big value plays for Mark O'Hare. Adrian, Clarke, I'm just going to read out the prices, the top in the market. So Man City are 3.65 to win the Champions League, PSG 7.0, Liverpool 7.6, Bayern 8.6, and Real Madrid 12.0. You like one of those top teams?
Yeah, I'm drawn to PSG, and I know that they've blown it on numerous occasions, and a little bit like Manchester City, people are sort of wanting them to fall because of the ownership issues and whatnot. But I don't know. I think this feels like something different is happening at PSG coaching wise this year with Galtier. He seems to have forged a nice team ethic. They're nice, very professional across the first few games, and crucially, Messi's back on form. Messi, Neymar, Mbappe, they seem to have bought into it, and yeah, they're all in the goals. And I think that of all, and while I absolutely can see the direction that Miguel was taking, and Mark really with backing an outsider maybe this year because of the World Cup, with PSG, I think that they're likely to be in a very strong position domestically come the business end of this tournament, where they can rest and rotate at key times and make sure that the main men are fresh for the big knockout ties. So yeah, look, I with Manchester City, I still don't think they've really solved the defensive issues. They've been quite wobbly against Villa, against Newcastle. So I can't say with any assurance that they've solved what's been their problem. Liverpool haven't started the season well. Bayern Munich have been a bit rocky as well. And Real Madrid, you think, well, surely they can't do it again with so much good fortune on their side last season. So look, I'm looking at PSG, but I do think it's fairly wide open this year. It should be a great and exciting Champions League campaign.
Just on City, just as you're talking there, Adrian, and I agree that they haven't actually solved their main issue. And I think it's going to be interesting when it gets to the knockout stage, especially because, and Guardiola already referenced or touched on this after the Newcastle game where they conceded 3. What's his primary concern in Europe? What's every single move he's made in Europe that ended up working against him, but has been an issue? He's wanted control. Now, bear with me here, but I don't think it's outlandish to see a situation come the knockout stages where huge game and Haaland is dropped because he wants another midfielder in there to maintain control. Just because the way his mind works in these sort of games. Because obviously, I mean, with the way Haaland plays as well, and this is relevant. I think this is a much more relevant issue to this discussion over his touches and how much he's been praised for this. But ultimately, in these sort of games, I mean, if Pep Guardiola had his ideal, a 1 to 11 would basically be kind of 5'8" midfielders. 5'8" number 8.
It'll be trademark Pep in the Champions League semi-final to leave Haaland out and they'll blow it. Yeah, that would the accusations of overthinking will rear their head again. I can see it happening. I think you're onto something.
But it does feel like, I mean, and obviously in the Premier League, Haaland's goals surely just drive them to what I think would be a comfortable enough title, though we'll see. But the way he plays just kind of stretch the team. It can stretch the team a little bit, which leaves greater gaps for a team that are really all about kind of squeezing space with the ball and making it so difficult to get it off them.
Yeah, and you even think of Pep, maybe he doesn't want Haaland to win him that Champions League. You know what I mean? If he's kind of dropping him for a big game and does it without him, then you can say he did that. But
Yeah,
I did not think we'd be discussing dropping Haaland in the Champions League outright. Fancies preview podcast, but here we are. But yeah, couple of good shouts to the lads. Tottenham, Napoli for Mark. Adrian likes PSG, and Miguel does think that Liverpool will is a good play at 7.6. If you are watching us for the season, what we're going to do is going to preview maybe 4 marquee games. I'll maybe pick out the best bet from each of the guys for those games. The guys will have any other bet section to cover the rest of the games and a best bet section. Insights.matchbook.com. You can find all the podcast recap bets that'll be up this afternoon. And if you are watching us on YouTube, do give us a like and hit that subscribe button. But yeah, we'll move on to the first game, which is an absolute belter, to be honest with you. And if you can't get excited for this game, well, I don't know what's wrong with you. Napoli are home to Liverpool, and the betting that we currently have on matchbook.com, Napoli are 3.95. Liverpool 1.98 with a draw available at 3.9. Napoli getting a half a goal start at 1.99, and the total is a 3 goals, slightly shaded towards the under. So we'll go to you first on this one, Adrian. Liverpool for you this season, how have you found them in the Premier League? They just seem to be it's just the same team, Mane aside. It's just not seems to be happening for the season as well.
Inefficient is the way. I mean, they're creating all sorts of chances, but not good enough chances, and then they're spurning those opportunities as well, aren't they, Liverpool? It's been very, very strange. I mean, on Mo Salah alone, I don't think he's getting into enough goal-scoring positions, too far away from the goal. He's created 10 more chances than anyone else in open play in the Premier League, Mo Salah, this season. But he's in the shot count, he's down in 8th. So it's remarkable, really. So they need to fix that before they can start to really take good teams apart, because Salah's so important to them. But yeah, no, it's been a dodgy start. They haven't looked that good. They haven't been sure at the back either, with missing Matip and Konate. I think has impacted them for sure, and opponents have been able to get at them. So yeah, with Liverpool, there's a few little question marks on their early season form, and this is a tough game, really tough game. First up against the Napoli side that are unbeaten so far in Serie A. 3 wins, 2 draws, top scorers. I think they've got 12 already. They've had the most shots. They're averaging almost 20 shots a game. Napoli, so very, very attack-minded so far. And in their last match, they were superb against Lazio, winning that one by 2-1. So yeah, you look at this and you think, well, this is one that Liverpool, if they're not at it, could easily trip up in. I think that Napoli will go in quite bold, quite attack-minded. Their forwards are in good form, so why wouldn't they? Osimhen's playing well, he's scoring goals. Kvaratskhelia, I don't know if I pronounced that properly. Kvaradona, they're nicknaming him. We should probably stick with that. The Georgian has been outrageously good. Could be the signing of the season across Europe. He's been so good. So he's an exciting player to keep your eye on. And I think they'll take it to Liverpool. And whether that leaves them exposed to Jurgen Klopp's team on the counter, it might be the case. But yeah, I was looking at goals initially, but I think the line is a bit high. It puts me off a touch. Both teams to score is too skinny. So for me, my pick here would actually be to oppose Liverpool and just to get Napoli on side on a handicap, and you can get them for even money, can't you? 1.99. I think that is a very good value bet when there are so many question marks about Liverpool at the moment, when Napoli are playing so well. So yeah, I think they can make a real game of this. If it was a draw or even a Napoli win, it wouldn't shock me. They did, of course, take 4 points off Liverpool in the 2019-20 Champions League group stage. So they've done it before, and they'll believe they can do it again.
Yeah, Mark, for you, you've been very impressed with Napoli this season, and obviously given the transfers outs they've had throughout the season, it's been a fine start for Spalletti and Napoli this season.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, they're flying high. Very impressed with the performance against Lazio at the weekend. Very professional job. Just got so much going forward. So many different ways in which they can hurt you. And I can't say too much more than what Adrian's already sort of said and eulogized about, really. Irving Lozano did pick up a nasty head injury at the weekend. Remains to be seen whether he'll be fit and available, but they've got players who can come in and do a job. And I like their prospects here as well. I think if you're getting the opportunity to back Napoli with the draw on side at the same price as Liverpool to win away, a venue where they've lost in the last 2 trips in 2018 and 19, I'm quite happy to take that, really. I think Napoli have won 5 of their last 6 at home to Premier League opposition, which is very strong. We know all about the sort of white-hot atmosphere the Diego Maradona Stadium can have in these particular moments in time. I know it was sold out a long time ago, and fans are very much looking forward to the visit of a Liverpool team who, let's be honest, struggled in a difficult atmosphere at Old Trafford, struggled in a difficult atmosphere around at Craven Cottage on Matchday 1. And also sort of failed to sort of convert their opportunities at Everton at the weekend, where I know Jordan Pickford was man of the match. They hit the woodwork, but Adrian's touched on it really. But no side had more shots on target, or shots in the box than Liverpool this season in the Premier League. But also they are conceding much more opportunities than they're kind of accustomed to, and I think that just becomes around because of that midfield balance, which hasn't looked quite right yet this season. Let's talk with Thiago. We're back at training on Monday, but I think Klopp said at the weekend that's just 2 days training in time for a game of this magnitude. It looks unlikely he'll be available. Van Dijk's not looked quite himself, even in central defence. So I don't think Liverpool are a million miles away. I think a couple of those shots that have gone wide or been saved, if they go in with having a completely different conversation. But right now, I think they're good enough to sort of oppose at the prices. But just because I've got big faith in Napoli being very competitive in this pool and following Liverpool through to the last 16.
Yeah, Miguel, on Liverpool, it's obviously a very hard one to judge this season, but are people maybe underestimating the impact that Sadio Mane had on that team? And just because Diaz is playing well in that position doesn't necessarily mean that it's not been good for Liverpool this season to be without Mane.
It does feel like that a little bit. And one of the things I actually heard from kind of inside the club was almost feeling that there's only a realization now that with Mane, I mean, obviously they signed him at Southampton in 2016, and he developed there as a player. But because it's one of those strange situations where, because they kind of witnessed his development, now it's almost underappreciated that they've actually lost a player who's at the very top of the world game. And while Núñez, say, may rise to that level as well, he's still young, still only really had a kind of one proper season in Europe. He's not at that level yet. And now, it sounds such an obvious thing to say, but it's kind of something that's become more stark, that basically Liverpool had a world-class forward, and that attack is now adapting to the lack of a player like that, especially as they try and kind of work out a new way of playing as well. So I think that, that has hugely influenced Liverpool. As regards this game, I've gone for quite low scoring. I'm possibly influenced by the fact I was working on the transfer window all last week and had to tot up things. But one thing you just keep screaming out from me: the expenditure gap between English clubs and everyone else, including, I think, Serie A, it might have been in gross terms the third highest spending league. I think it was 1.3 billion or 1.4 billion behind the Premier League. And for all we can look at domestic form, I think, when it comes to the Champions League, and this is why we've had 2 All-English Champions League finals in the last 4 years, I think those gaps will manifest themselves, and will do so more and more as the seasons go on. I was at that Napoli game 3 years ago. It was a different Napoli, a very different Napoli now, actually, and under Ancelotti. Obviously, Spalletti's a more kind of, his teams could be more effervescent, but for that reason, I think Liverpool will just shore up a bit, look to kind of play this in the strategic way Klopp has done in some European away games, and it's why I probably fancy a narrow Liverpool win, but instead I think I'm actually going maybe counterintuitively almost a low scoring game.
Yeah, interesting that unders angle, but I think for the first bet here we're going to go with Adrian and Mark on Napoli plus a half a goal at 1.99, just given Liverpool's rocky start. So it's a big season for presenters to pick the right bets, but again, like everyone, if you want to go with Adrian, Mark and Miguel's tips, you can be guided there. We're covering the main games and their leans very much for the guys. So we'll move on to our second game, and that's Ajax versus Rangers. Really looking forward to this, and looking forward to the old firm in general being back in the Champions League. But let's take a look at the betting as we have it on matchbook.com. Ajax are 1.46, Rangers available at 6.8, and the draw is 5.2. Handicap, Rangers are getting a plus 1.25 goal start at 1.92, and the total is 3 goals, shaded towards the overs. So we'll go to you for this one, Mark. This was your game of choice, and there are a lot of really big marquee ties. So I'm very fascinated and interested in your betting angle here for this game.
I was quite keen on this game, and then I obviously watched what happened on Saturday lunchtime when Rangers completely unravelled in the Old Firm derby. And you don't want to rip up your plans based on one game. The perils of just sort of reacting to small samples. But I was very tempted to just kind of rip up and start again, because it was pretty horrifying. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong for Rangers. The goalkeeper had a mare, the midfield was too pedestrian and outmanoeuvred, and Van Bronckhorst was quite rightly critical of his players, saying some of them just weren't ready for the challenge that they faced. So I would expect a big improvement from Rangers. I think they're more than capable of doing so. We've seen in the past, not just recently, but over the last 12, 18 months, how good they can be in Europe. Look at some of the venues they went to last season on their road to the Europa League final, and how competitive they were at the likes of Leipzig and Dortmund. So in theory, going to Ajax shouldn't hold any sort of fears for them. So yeah, I think they can be competitive. My original viewpoint was to back Rangers +1.25. I'm going to stick with that. because I think they have been slightly undervalued and underrated in this group. They've thrived in European competition. They know what's required. And it's not that long ago they went to PSV Eindhoven and pulled off a result in qualifying, having held PSV at Ibrox. Tactically, I thought they were superb across both legs. They were a little bit fortuitous with the winning goal in Eindhoven, but they were 4-1 shots in that key qualifying contest. That's 5.0. They're now 6.8 for the trip to Ajax. Now, I know Ajax are rated higher than PSV, and understandably so, but they've gone through a massive rebuild this summer. It's their first year without Ten Hag for 5 seasons. They've also lost of last year's team Sebastian Haller, Lisandro Martinez, Ryan Gravenberch, Andre Onana, Mazwari, Tagliafico. They've got 7 starters from last season who've been sold or left the club, really. So that's quite a significant number of players to sort of overhaul. They've started reasonably well domestically. PSV did smash them up in the Super Cup, but I wouldn't read too much into that. So I'm just kind of working off the basis that Rangers, if they were in the Eredivisie, I believe could finish in the top 4. I think they are progressive. I think they're capable, and I think they are being slightly undervalued here. So, backing them +1.25 means even if they lose by 1 goal here, we still make money. A win and a draw gets the full payout. But to require Ajax to beat Rangers by 2 goals or more, I think is asking quite a lot. And I think Rangers are more than good enough to sort of hold firm here and get something of value.
Interesting play there, Mark. Miguel, Delaney, for you, it's an exciting time for Scottish football having the Old Firm clubs, and sort of a surprise given how tricky Rangers' qualifying path was to get into the group stage here as well.
Yeah, I mean, they've really shown the European pedigree. And this is the thing, for all, I suppose, having spoken about Liverpool and Napoli in terms of these kind of financial gaps in European football. And one of the reasons that these games are so big for the Glasgow clubs is because it's been so long since we've had proper event games for the Old Firm. But of course, these aren't just event games. They're also games where they think they should compete. I actually think Rangers are quite a decent shout to get out of that group, given that for all Napoli have started the season well, it's still just 5 games and there are ructions to adapt to. As Mark's mentioned there, Ajax have gone through so many changes, and Rangers have real European pedigree over the past season and a half. Well, it's over the past year, from last season's Europa League campaign going into how they qualified this season, including that win over PSV. And it's why, I think this is a really hard game to call. If it was in Glasgow, at Ibrox, I'd go Rangers on current form and in current situation. For this, though, I think it's going to be an open, electric game, which might maybe why I should have gone actually more. I've gone for both teams to score. I wonder should I have gone maybe over 3.5, I have to say.
Oh, expecting goals. Adrian, you're expecting a different approach to it, Rangers.
I was going the opposite direction, just purely because of Rangers and they've been very professional away from home, and they're all about setting up to be hard to beat and looking to pick teams off. They haven't been involved in a whole bunch of high-scoring games. They obviously won in Lyon and won in Dortmund last season. They lost at Braga. They lost at Red Star as well. So they've had a mixed bag of results away from home. But my takeaway from Rangers in Europe is that, they set up to be hard to beat away, and then at home anything can happen with the fans roaring them on. I definitely agree with Mark on the changes at Ajax. They've lost a lot of talent. Obviously, the manager is a big one, but also the players that have sort of been drained out of the club. And we don't know how this new batch will fare in Eredivisie. They look good. Steven Bergwijn is on fire. The former Spurs player, I think he's got six goals already. So he's the new main man. But is he really going to do the damage in the Champions League? I'm not that convinced. I find it hard to pick a winner here. I think Rangers on the handicap is a shout, but for me, I was drawn. The thing that caught my eye when I looked at the odds here was the goal line at 3. I thought that was too high. Now I might be wide off the mark because Miguel was saying over 3.5. I just thought it was quite high. So to get under 3, better than evens to 2.03, I think looks quite appealing. I think it'd be quite a close run thing, but we'll see how it plans out.
Interesting, yeah. A number of betting angles there. I think for this one, we're going to do a no bet, given that we do have a lot in the any other bets. But if you want to be guided with any of the guys, there's some interesting betting angles there. Looking forward to that game. All right. We'll move on to the third game we're covering here, which is the mighty Tottenham Hotspur, home to Marseille. And we'll just take a look at the betting as we have it on matchbook.com. Tottenham are available at 1.53. Marseille are 7.2. The draw is available at 4.6. The handicap, Marseille are getting a 1-goal start at 2.08, and the total is 2.5 goals, and that's a good bit shaded to the over at 1.75. We'll go to you for this one, Miguel. What do you make of Mark's point? I thought it was very interesting on Conte. Like, he obviously has the domestic form with his previous clubs, and whether that's just he hasn't had enough seasons to maybe have a proper go at the Champions League. But do you reckon Spurs can have a good shot at this Champions League, given that it's a little bit of concern over Conte, perhaps?
The group is certainly favourable. I mean, it's one of those strange situations. I do think it's largely some coincidence, some maybe circumstantial as to why Conte's Champions League record is poor, even though he's one of the best coaches in the game. I mean, say like when he was at Chelsea, when he had his best team at Chelsea, they weren't in the Champions League. In the following season, 2017-18, they went into it with all sorts of chaos. That season was never right. So his one crack at the Champions League at Chelsea was in that sort of situation. And then they faced the Barcelona with Messi and incredible form. I was at that game. Messi destroyed them. Then we would see it with Juventus. His 3 years there coincided with, I think, a Serie A that was still kind of coming out of the fallout from Calciopoli. It was in a weak point in Italian history. And even kind of Inter's 2010 victory had been a bit of an anomaly in that regard. So, I mean, from that perspective, I think Conte was almost in a situation where it was like Ferguson at United in the 90s, when English football was quite low in comparison to Europe, rather than necessarily being a reflection of how they'd adapt to European football. So, I mean, the way Conte plays, the way we've seen him beat some of the best teams, like in particular Guardiola's Manchester City, means like there's no tactical issues here, and I think as regards their run, some of it will depend on what the situation is like in the Premier League. Although it does look like they should be fairly comfortable top 4, if not maybe aiming higher. And I think that this group is forgiving. And I fully expect them to start at the right pace and right tone, and get a very controlled victory over Marseille. Yeah,
you're kind of looking at the Spurs and under 4.5 goals. And Adrian, you actually agree with Miguel, which makes a nice change here.
It does. Yeah, I'm glad we're thinking alike on this one. Yeah, no, look, Marseille have started the season very well, haven't they? 16 points from 6 matches under Igor Tudor. It's like a Premier League sort of old boys 11, isn't it? There are so many names that we'll recognise, including Alexis Sanchez, Eric Bailly, a few from Arsenal. Yeah, Guendouzi, Kolasinac, Tavares. Tavares has suddenly started scoring goals. I mean, what is going on there? I mean, he never looked like scoring for Arsenal. So it's a strange one. Lots of players that we'll recognise, lots of older players, I guess, in the lineup as well. And they've started well domestically, but I just don't. Any defence that contains Kolasinac or Tavares, I can't back them against a team that, like Tottenham, have got Kulusevski, Son, Richarlison, Kane, of course, as the options up front. So Spurs, I think, are very worthy favourites here. That said, Marseille have had a couple of clean sheet victories in the last week, so they've tightened up a little bit there. So it's a sign maybe that they're finding their feet shape-wise. Marseille have a terrible Champions League record. I think they've lost 13 in a row. So that's something to consider as well. So yeah, look, I think they'll give it a go, and they might have their moments in the game, but I would imagine Tottenham will control the game and get the 3 points in a controlled but maybe not thrilling manner. So yeah, my pick is it's the same. Spurs and under 4.5 goals.
Yeah, Mark, you've always been the flag bearer for the Chelsea or Spurs and under 4.5 goals. So to see you come in here with the overs angle, I'm intrigued for this betting angle there. So no pressure again.
Yeah, I just think Tottenham are more than good enough to score at least twice here, and that's all you're basically doing here is just ruling out the 1-0 home victory, which I think is probably one of the more unlikely scorelines of this match. I think last weekend Spurs, the 2-1 win against Fulham was probably more convincing than that. They generated almost 3 expected goals, had 17 shots in the box, and hit the woodwork twice. And that was Conte shuffling his pack slightly too, with Richarlison starting, and he impressed. So I think it's worth bearing in mind that this weekend Tottenham face Manchester City as well in the Premier League, and that's going to be certainly the forefront of their mind as well. So I wouldn't, I'd expect Conte and his team to look to start strongly here, try and put the game to bed early doors, and then they can at least rest, rotate, make those 5 subs and start focusing at the weekends. But yeah, Marseille have made a much better start than anticipated. Igor Tudor was booed on his first game as head coach before he even kicked the ball.
First game.
Yeah, he was booed by the fans before kickoff on the opening day. So there was talk of massive fallouts between players and coach and disconnect, and they just weren't impressed with him as an appointment after Jorge Sampaoli. And but he's impressed really. If you look at his team at Verona last year, they were very attack-minded, as has his Marseille team so far. They like to bomb forward from fullback positions or wing-backs, I should say. Nuno Tavares, as Adrian said, has made a brilliant start. And on the opposite flank, Jonathan Klaus, one of the best fullbacks in the Ligue 1 last season, has been superb too. So maybe they'll get some joy there, but I guess that's a strength of Spurs too. So Alexis Sanchez is suspended here. I believe it's a legacy thing from a previous suspension, but yeah, that's a bit of a blow because he started really well for Marseille. But you know, it's saying something when you're counting on the likes of Guendouzi and Sanchez and Kolasinac. Marseille and French teams don't tend to fare well in the Champions League. And Adrian's right, that losing streak, it's 14 losses and 15 Champions League games. I know they've not been in this competition for 2 years, but this is a tough opener, and I just expect Marseille to almost declare a 1-goal defeat at best and see what they can get and move on.
Yeah, interesting plays there. I might go just for the bigger price there at Spurs and under 4.5 goals at 1.87. But yeah, look, 2, 3, and 4 nils or 3-1 keeps both bets there. So there's some interesting plays, but all pro Spurs here against Marseille. So move on to game 4. And personally, I'm looking forward to this game the most out of all the Champions League fixtures. You can have all your big names, but Celtic Park, Champions League nights are back, hosting the Champions League winners. It doesn't get bigger than this. And let's take a look at the betting. And Celtic are given a shot here. They're 5.7. Real Madrid are 1.65, and the draw is available at 4.4. Celtic getting a 1-goal start on the Asian handicap line at 1.9, and the total is 3.0, slightly shaded towards the unders. So we'll go to you, Adrian, on this. I've kind of mentioned it there in the build-up about Celtic. It's a massive night for them, isn't it? Because for years, maybe the last 10 years, their domestic form has been brilliant, but since the Rodgers era, and onwards, it hasn't quite happened in Europe for them.
No, it hasn't. But yeah, I think even players that play for Real Madrid will be wary of a night at Celtic Park. It'll be uncomfortable because it's famous. It's going to be an absolute crescendo of noise, and even players that have been there and done everything are capable of being unsettled by that kind of noise. And also, if you marry that with the tactics of Ange Postecoglou, which is just bold. I mean, I've spoken to quite a few Scottish people ahead of this game, and I've listened to people that follow Celtic intently. They are not going to change their style. There might be a little bit more of a focus out of possession on shape, but they are going to go for it, and they're going to play attack-minded, swashbuckling football where they can and get this crowd right behind them. So, and for that reason, I was looking at goals, but the goal line is, again, it doesn't offer that much value. I think this is a match where they'll take the fight to Real Madrid. Both teams could easily score. Real Madrid have started the season with 3 away wins domestically, and they've won the other one at home, 2-1 against Betis. Their key men up front looking good. Nick, they beat Frankfurt, didn't they? 2-0 in the Super Cup as well. That was quite comfy. So there's a lot to like, I think, about Real Madrid and whatnot moving forwards under Ancelotti. They are a machine. They've got incredible strength and depth, and they should outclass Celtic. but that crowd will level things up a little bit, you know. And they've got goal scorers, haven't they? Abada in particular is on fire. I think Furuhashi might be injured. He came off, didn't he, at the weekend in the Old Firm game? So we'll see how whether he's available or not. But I think Celtic will go for it. It'll be a very exciting game, but ultimately, I can't go against Real Madrid, the champions, all that firepower. I think they'll win. And I think the game will have over 2.5 goals. So, yeah, you're just sort of getting onside a possible Celtic goal, but surely Real Madrid are good enough to score 2, 3 or 4 in this fixture. They're a class act.
Yeah, Mark O'Hare, 3.3 is currently the price for your selection. Real Madrid and both teams to score. It's a big price considering, especially if you listen to a lot of what Adrian said there.
Yeah, I echo almost everything Adrian says, really. One thing it's worth reiterating. We talk about Parkhead, particularly on Champions League nights, but this is their first home game in 5 years in the Champions League group stage, at home to the defending champions, fresh off thrashing Rangers in the Old Firm. You can just imagine the crowd. They are going to be absolutely buzzing for this. So,
Wow.
Real Madrid have had their moments as well. You look at the group stage since 2018, they've lost to CSKA Moscow, they've lost to Shakhtar Donetsk, they've lost to Sheriff as well. We all remember the nights when Celtic have done over sort of Barcelona and Milan when they've been at their pomp. So, you wouldn't discount it. But I just look at that price on Real Madrid, which is creeping up to close to 1.65. That's a big price for the Champions League winners. 5 times in the last 9 years going to Celtic. So, yeah, I agree. Postecoglou, very offensively minded coach, front foot, high energy, quick, incisive passing. Celtic will go there to try and hurt a Real Madrid team who, let's be honest, have not been watertight in La Liga so far this season either. I've watched their efforts away at Espanyol and Celta and Almeria on the road. They give up chances and give up plenty of them as well. They're averaging well over 1 expected goal against in those matches, 12 shots per game, 4 shots on target per game on average. Just by the law of averages, teams are expected to score from those number of opportunities. So Celtic have a high chance of scoring here. Real Madrid have yet to keep a clean sheet. They've won all 4 of their matches alongside both teams to score. But ultimately, as Adrian says, when you've got Vinny Jr. and Benzema leading your attack, you're always going to be in with a strong chance of scoring a couple of goals at least. So, I just was sort of persuaded by the price here of Real Madrid to win and both teams scoring.
Price.
Yeah, it's a massive price, Miguel, and everything Mark said about the Champions League night, the massive win at the weekend, the Champions League winners, 5 years since a game at Parkhead in the Champions League is going to be a massive night for Celtic.
Yeah, I'm going to it. I can't wait. It's my first European game at Celtic Park. I'm really looking forward to it from that perspective. And it's because of that. I think I agree with the lads. I think they'll put it up to Madrid because even Postecoglou's approach even kind of fits a night like this. No low kind of like classic containment or anything like that. They'll go. There'll be adventure, which is why I think there'll be goals. I've gone for both teams to score. I think Madrid are easy to get at. I do wonder whether they're, especially as their midfield is kind of in the process of being reshaped, whether they are particularly missing Casemiro right now. Given, while he's had some fitness issues that he started at United, he did start most of Madrid's league games and Champions League games last season. And a key to their run was actually Casemiro sitting much deeper in front of the defence than he usually would have done, which created that base. It does feel there's a greater vulnerability now, as the lads have pointed to in La Liga, that Celtic can get at. But yeah, again, it just comes down to the fact, ultimately, while it might not be Real Madrid at a peak, even from last season's Real Madrid, it's still Real Madrid, the European champions, with a lot of firepower. And I think, for me, it feels like one of these games where I think in 2001, 2002, Juventus beat Celtic 4-3 at Parkhead in a brilliant match with some great goals. And I fancy something similar for this, and I'm hoping it will be.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited there. I think 3.3 is a great price, given that even the hardest of Celtic fans would reckon a similar sort of that scoreline wouldn't be a disaster, and if they put up a good performance, that they can potentially get out of the group. So yeah, Real Madrid and both teams have scored 3.2 though currently on Matchbook. So yeah, that's a good play there. Before we get into the any other bet section, if you haven't got a Matchbook.com account and you are looking to sign up, what better to do than our current welcome offer? It's £30 welcome offer, money back as a free bet if your first bet loses. That's £30 welcome offer, money back as a free bet if your first bet loses, and all terms and conditions for that are inside stopmatchbook.com, and you can use any of the guys' best bets. It's risk free, and as it's money back and up to £30. So as it should, we're invariably best price on a lot of domestic games at the weekend, but it's a similar thing in the Champions League. That hour or two before kickoff, margins really tighten in. So well worth getting a Matchbook bet and exchange account if you haven't got one. Mark O'Hare, I'm interested here in your any other bet section. So you've gone for an overs play in Salzburg versus AC Milan.
Yeah, really interested in this game, actually. Salzburg have had to do a lot of retooling over the summer. They've lost a lot of their best talent, as they normally do. 10 players have left the club. However, they still pack plenty of punch going forward. And I think this is a potential banana skin for Milan up first, away in Austria, straight off the back of an emotional and physical Milan derby at the weekend as well. So they'll be needing to get a result here, and they really should. They are favourites to do so. But I think Salzburg going forward, they've still got Šeško, Okafor and Fernando have started the season brilliantly. And they're a team that will always go, just like we're talking about Celtic, they'll go for teams, particularly in Austria. They've got a very highly rated coach who prefers front foot football. They've scored in, I think, the last 24 games across all competitions. Excellent at home in last season's competition. I know they had a soft group in terms of Sevilla, Lille and Wolfsburg, but I think we saw in both legs against Bayern Munich, particularly in the first 20 minutes, they really go for teams. And I think they'll have an opportunity to get the better of Milan in what I expect to be quite a basketball-style game. Salzburg have kept just the one clean sheet in 25 Champions League ties, going back quite a few years now. 21 of those featured both teams scoring. So, if you think you're already onto a 1-1, why not add an extra goal for over 2.5 goals at 1.8? They're playing a Milan team who have plenty of threats themselves, particularly from fullback with Calabria and Hernandez bombing forward. Does tend to leave Kalulu and Tomori a little bit exposed, with Benacer holding and Tonali getting forward from centre midfield. But just like the hosts, Milan have got so much quality in forward areas. Rafael Leao, player of the season in Serie A last season, had a wonderful game at the weekend. Giroud's been making an impact. Charles de Ketelaere from Brugge is already making an impact too after signing from Belgium, and Messias as well has been playing pretty well too. So Milan can absolutely contribute. I expect both teams scoring, and then therefore I think overs isn't too far a reach to 1.8. So yeah, I'd expect the goal line to be a little bit higher in Salzburg games. So quite happy to take the overs there.
Yeah, so that's over 2.5 goals, Salzburg versus Milan. That's currently 1.78. Adrian, and another big price here for your any other bets here. So I'll let you take it away here. Bayern to beat Inter Milan and both teams to score.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the previous match that we were talking about with Celtic and Real Madrid. I just feel this would be a very attack-minded game. Inter have got a very high XG in open play. I think the second best in open play in Serie A this season. They've scored 9 goals in open play already this season as well. But at the back, they've let in 8. So they're not watertight. We saw in the derby at the weekend that they can concede goals quite easily, and Bayern Munich, as we know, have got plenty of firepower. They might have lost Lewandowski, but they've got some unbelievable players at the top end of the pitch. But for them as well, they slipped up at Union Berlin, didn't they, at the weekend? They're making 1 or 2 errors as well in defence. So I think this would be quite an open game. I mean, the book tells you it will be. Both teams to score is 1.56. I mean, you can't really back both teams to score here. So I absolutely think both teams will score. And then it's which side do you go? Do you go with the hosts, or do you go with Bayern Munich, who have much more pedigree, of course, at Champions League level? And I have to go with the Germans, really. I think Inter have had a habit of sort of freezing a little bit at home in big games. They blanked, didn't they, against Real Madrid? They blanked against Liverpool at home last season. Even though they played well, they didn't deliver the winning performance when maybe they could have done. So I think Bayern will have the edge here. And yeah, for that, with Mane as well in decent form, deep squad, players off the bench that can impact the game. I think that Bayern Munich will win an exciting game. So yeah, but Bayern and both teams have scored. Nice little price, isn't it? 3.25.
Yeah, I just found myself nodding in agreement there. It's a very good price. Bayern to beat Inter Milan and both teams to score, yes, is the play there for Adrian. Miguel, you want to cover a little bit of PSG versus Juventus, and you've gone for PSG to win and over 2.5 goals here at 1.86.
Yeah, I was at PSG last year for one of their. It wasn't. I think it was their first game. It was their first big game. Their first home game of last season Champions League campaign. A 2-0 win against Manchester City. That was a statement. It was Messi's first goal in Europe, and I think they're a better team now. I think they'll be in a similar sort of mood. They're playing an inferior side. Juventus, I couldn't put much trust in them at all at the moment. And for all those reasons and the way they're working, I think this will be one of those nights where kind of PSG have a kind of a Champions League statement. And I'd be quite bullish about them winning and winning well.
Yeah, and I'm very excited now here. So that's PSG to beat Juventus and over 2.5 goals, 1.86. But I'm very excited here because I think this is the first time we've ever had this banner up at least in our best bet section. And that's Mark and Adrian's best bet, Man City to beat Seville and under 4.5 total goals.
I did not know that. Yeah, this is
there you go. A nice little surprise, Adrian. Well, I might let you take it away and then Mark can kind of feed off the back of it. What stood out to you here?
I saw Sevilla at pre-season at the Emirates Cup. That was shocking. I mean, I know it wasn't their first team, it wasn't a proper match, but they were so bad. And everyone told me we had a kickoff, the best defensive record in Spanish football last season. We knew about Lopetegui. He's a good coach, but they didn't look ready for the season. They've had a really poor start. I think they've only got 1 point, haven't they? They lost 3-0 at home to Barcelona at the weekend. And obviously their defence was decimated. They lost key players in the summer. One of them ended up at Aston Villa and he's got crocked, doesn't he, Diego Carlos? But yeah, the new rear guard are not quite up to speed yet. I think that much is fair to say. It'll probably happen. Lopetegui is a good coach, and I'm sure he'll sort them out. But in the here and now, they're there for the taking, I think, Sevilla. Obviously, naturally, they keep things tight there. So I would expect them to be quite pragmatic in the game. They're not going to take that many risks. But just quality-wise, I think they'll fall short against the Man City team that I think will be smarting a little bit from being sloppy against Villa. Should have won that game, 1-0 up, should have closed it off, got the second. They messed around with it. And yeah, in the end, they paid a price for it. I think there'll be a bounce back from them. They'll be really tight. And if you think about City in Europe on the road, that there often are it's very difficult to beat. And they'll set about this game very professionally, I think. So yeah, City at under 4.5 really stood out to me as soon as I saw the fixture.
Yeah, Mark, for you, is there a danger sometimes, and it always is the danger back in Man City and the under 4.5 goals that they just go absolutely nuts.
They get 5 or 6.
Yeah. So I'm getting that in ahead of time, but also trying to get you to defend that and why you still think City and under 4.5 total goals, 1.77 is still a great price and value play here.
Yeah, I'm sure we backed City in under 4.5 goals last season.
We did.
The Champions League when they went to Sporting and absolutely trounced them by half time. So
yeah.
There's always that concern. Traditionally, Sevilla is one of the toughest places to go in European football. They have regressed significantly over the last 12 months. I have a feeling Lopetegui will be gone before Christmas. Pressure is already mounting upon him. Some of it unfairly, some of it his own doing after the way in which Sevilla finished last season in terms of his pragmatism kind of worked against Sevilla in key matches, and they lost vital ground really in a title race they really should have been in because they put all their eggs in that basket last year, invested heavily, and they're paying the price for it now. And the 3-0 against Barcelona at the weekend could have been 6. That's a worry obviously if you're on unders, but they're winless in 4. They've lost 3 of those. Even the likes of newly promoted Almeria and Osasuna have had plenty of joy against them already this season. The centre-back issues are well documented. Monchi's usual high standards in terms of recruitment haven't been matched this time around, and there's issues at the back, central back this week, or this midweek, I should say. Karim Rekic, who'd normally start there now, is injured, so they've got a makeshift centre-half partnership of Nianzou and Gudeli, which is a massive concern when you come up against Man City. So, there was a couple of ways we could try and play. You could back Man City -1 quarter, but I thought, bearing in mind they're playing Tottenham at the weekend, City to win under the 4.5 goals was the preferred play at the price, just because, similar to what I said earlier about Spurs, I can see them getting ahead by 2 goals or more and just kind of chilling out really and looking forward to the weekend. So I expect them to win and win with a little bit of room to spare.
So yeah, that's City under 4.5 total goals, 1.77. Miguel, it's a massive price for your best bet. It's Atletico Madrid to beat Porto on under 2.5 goals. Very quickly, what do you make of Atletico? I tuned in to watch them there last weekend against Valencia, and it's just the same old Atletico. It could be 10 years from now, and it's still the same old Atletico digging out those results. They've a great Champions League record, but you reckon the first game up, they're just going to do the business and do it properly and efficiently against Porto?
All of that, the fact he could be sitting there 10 years and the same Simeone is precisely why I've gone for this. Now, I do actually think there's a wider discussion with it because I think generally Simeone's football isn't as effective as it was even 5 years ago just because of the way the game has evolved, which is why we're not quite seeing get to the absolute latter stages of Champions League anymore, where they've kind of become a quarter-finalist team, really. But that said, they should have enough for Porto, and I just see I'm actually surprised it's so high because to me it just looks like the most vintage type of Atletico win. Atletico 1-0 at home in the Champions League. I I'm intrigued. I might go and have a look at what the stats are for that now, because it just feels like the most vintage possible result, especially for an opening game. Even if they make it difficult for themselves and don't get an early goal, which is often why their games can be so difficult to watch. And I was genuinely surprised when I saw the price.
Yeah.
Interesting. Big play, 3.9 currently on Matchbook. So that's a Letigo to be poured out on under 2.5 total goals. And again, you can use the alternative markets there, and that's where you can find that. We're done for match day one. My thanks to Adrian, Clarke, Mark O'Hare, Miguel, Delaney. The guys will be back on the Weekend Football Podcast. The work is really ramping up over the next few weeks, guys, and that's before the World Cup. So God help you all. But thank you as always. Insights.matchbook.com if you want a full recap of this podcast bets. That'll be up about 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon. But other than that, chat to you guys on Thursday. We'll be back next Monday. And for now, take care and enjoy the football. Best of luck.